Hey, Life Group leaders, welcome to week 3 of our series, Building Character. And this week, we're looking at a really interesting story in the Bible in 1 Samuel 25. And our main character is actually a woman. Her name is Abigail. And the title in my head that I've given this story is Two Egos and a Wise Woman. Because Abigail, really, she's the hero of the story. She saves the day. And as we look in the beginning of the story, we see that David is still fleeing from King Saul. At this point, David's not king yet. He's been anointed, but he's not appointed. And he's often hiding in the desert and running away from King Saul. And as he's doing that, he's brushing up against this man's land, and his name is Nabal. And what we see in the story is that Nabal is not a very nice guy. He's more of a surly, mean type of character, and his wife is Abigail, and she's just great. It says in the story that she's intelligent, that she's beautiful, that she's just all around a great person. And so what we see though is that David sends some messengers to Nabal and basically asks for some aid. He wants some help from Nabal in the situation that he's in. And at this point, David, he's not hiding alone. He's got about 400 men in the desert, and it seems that they're getting a little bit hungry. And so he sends 10 of his men over to Nabal and asks to see if Nabal will spare some resources, because David's been so good to his shepherds. He's offered some protection. And of course, at this point, unfortunately, Nabal, he says, "Who's David?" Right? One of the biggest disses that you can think of. Who is David? And he sends the messengers back to David, and basically they relay the message that Nabal is not interested in helping at all. And so at this point, David's angry, he's upset, and he sends his men along with himself to Nabal's place, and he's about to go to war. He says, "Put your swords on. We're going to take out Nabal and all of his men." Scary situation. He's heated, he's upset. And this is really in the story where we see Abigail shine, where she comes out in all of her wisdom as one of the servants goes and reports to Abigail what has happened and that David's men are on their way. And so Abigail, filled with wisdom, she loads up some donkeys with some cakes and some food, and she sends them over to David. And as the men, it says, are descending down on Nabal's camp, Abigail intercepts. She falls on her face before David, and she asks for forgiveness. And it's this beautiful depiction of a woman who is a peacemaker and being wise in between the conflict of two angry and egotistical men. And so Abigail, really, she's our spotlight character of this story here in 1 Samuel 25. So as you read through this story, think about what stands out to you from Abigail's decision here to be the person who's intercepting. I think of Jesus's words in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, where he says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." And really, Abigail, she is a peacemaker in this story. Martin Luther King Jr. said, peacemakers are active. Sometimes we think of peacemaker as a peacekeeper, right? Someone who is keeping the peace, someone who's being passive, who's trying to conserve or maintain what's going on. But Abigail, really in the story, she's a peacemaker. She's going out to David. She's making the wrongs of her husband right in this situation, and she's bringing reconciliation to the story. And so what we see here eventually is that Abigail lets her husband in, that she intercepted David, that she brought aid to David and his men. And Nabal is so distraught by this that it seems in the story he has what seems to be a heart attack. And it says that he turns to stone, and 10 days later, he passes away. And so after that, Abigail is a widow, and David sees her as a widow and makes Abigail his wife. And so here's Abigail doing the right thing, choosing wisdom, choosing to be a peacemaker, and she becomes the wife of a king. Really, it's a quite interesting story. So as you're going through this story in 1 Samuel 25, and you're looking at this woman's character and how it represents Jesus's character, here's some questions just to be thinking about with your group. The first question is, do you tend to take actions to defend yourself by your own hands, or do you generally trust in God? So are you tempted to put actions in your own hands, or do you generally trust in God? Second question is, how did the Lord show his mercy to David when David felt angry and vengeful toward Nabal, right? So David's kind of in the wrong here in this story. He's got a fiery temper. So how did the Lord show mercy to David when he felt angry and vengeful to Nabal? Number 3, where do you turn first when you need counsel about dealing with difficulties? Number 4, would you consider yourself patient or maybe impatient? And number 5, how does Abigail's story foreshadow Jesus? I really love that. Question number 5. So think about these questions, read the passage, and see how this passage really points you towards Jesus and ultimately the character that we're supposed to exemplify as followers of him. Guys, thanks so much for watching this video, and I pray that your discussions are riveting and exciting as you go into your time together. Thanks, guys.